Chief Rabbi Mervis, Your Excellency Ambassador Hotovelli, the Right Honourable Lord Pickles, distinguished friends and Chaverim of Bnei Akiva. Thank you all for joining us again virtually. It is an honour and a privilege for me to have this opportunity to address you today. And whilst this isn't quite how we imagined or hoped Yom HaAtzmaut would look this year, we are grateful for the chance to celebrate with you all once again. Please God, this will be the last online ceremony, otherwise we might need to start thinking about a deal with Netflix for the trilogy. We are very fortunate in today's society that we have almost everything we need readily available at the swipe of a finger or touch of a button. We tend to take for granted things that not so long ago were seen as luxuries or privileges. For many of us, Israel has become synonymous with holidays, with family, or even with home. The way we are able to connect with Medinat Yisrael is vastly different to the ways our grandparents could when they were growing up. To them, Israel was a modern-day miracle, a Middle Eastern oasis that they were unlikely to experience firsthand for a number of years. To me, Israel is still that miracle. One of my favourite places in the entire country is the Tayelet in Jerusalem. If you've been lucky enough to spend some time there, you will know how beautiful a place it is, with spectacular views of Jerusalem and the Old City in particular. But the Tayelet is also one of my favourite places for another reason. Between the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 and the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967, the Tayelet was marked as no man's land and was effectively the border between Jordan and Israel. For 19 years, Israelis were barred access. For 19 years, Israelis couldn't walk along the grassy promenade like we can now. For 19 years, Israelis could only dream of seeing the views of the Old City. When I stand at that viewpoint now, and I look over the hustle and bustle of a thriving Jerusalem, a thriving capital of Israel, it is impossible for me to do anything but appreciate how fortunate I am to be able to stand there, to be able to daven at the Kotel, to be able to enter the Jewish state of Israel, and to do hundreds of other things that my ancestors could only dream of for thousands of years. So I say again, 73 years on, Israel is still that miracle. This year, we've lost out on a lot of things that we took for granted. Big things like going to visit Israel, or even small things like Shabbat lunches with friends. It's been a testing 12 months for us all. At Bnei Akiva, we have faced our own challenges. We could not run in the traditional sense annual favourites, such as Shabbat Hayagun and Machaneh, things that we have taken for granted as staples of the Bnei Akiva community year in and year out. For a movement that has been grounded in face-to-face activities and events for years, we have had to face up to all the government restrictions and innovate. We are proud of the way we stepped up to the challenge and provided a fun, educational, and perhaps most importantly in the circumstances, social space for our Chanukah. I remember vividly on Motzei Shabbat in mid-December. It was supposed to be the heart of pre-camp, but has now become colloquially known as Disaster Night. Tier 4 was announced that afternoon, and the Mazkir met at the bayit after Shabbat. We weren't sure whether to laugh or cry. A lot of time and effort had gone into preparing what would have been a very successful day camp in London, and now, less than 2 days before it was due to start, it was on the verge of being all for nothing. We knew we had to offer something. There were Chanechim that had been looking forward to Machaneh for months, and Madrechim that had been working tirelessly to prepare amazing Pa'alot. We could not let them down. And so, Winternet Machaneh was born from the ashes. Even then, I would be lying if I said I expected it to be as successful as it was. No one would have blamed the Madrechim, Skanim, or Roshim for calling it quits, packing up and going home. But they didn't. They forged ahead, replanned and adapted everything so it was suitable for a virtual medium. They came back day after day with more phenomenal tochniot and went above and beyond what we ever could have expected from them. And then they came back and did it all again throughout lockdown 3. So if you're listening to this as a chanech or as a parent or a grandparent, and you or any of your relatives benefited in any way from Bnei Akiva activities in the last few months, know that your Madrechim are heroes. If you're sitting in Manchester and remembering fondly your Winter Machaneh day camp, I cannot begin to tell you how impressive your Madrechim were, and the unbelievably difficult circumstances they had to overcome. And finally, if you're listening to this as a Madrech or a Madrecha, know that you are not and never will be taken for granted by Bnei Akiva. When I began writing this, I asked my colleagues what seemed to me a very simple question. What is the purpose of this address? And yet, There wasn't a clear-cut answer. Choose a message you are passionate about, I was told. Well, with that said, the message I've chosen is this. Bnei Akiva is special. It's special because of its ideology, and it's special because of its global family. But most importantly, it's special because of each and every individual that is and ever has been involved in the Tnuah. Every single person that's ever been a madrich, or a bogeret, or a member of the Hanhala. Every person that has given even the smallest bit of time and effort to try and make a difference to someone else's life. Because that is what Bnei Akiva is all about, making an impact on others. This year, more than any other year, we have seen firsthand how much our bogrim and madrichim are willing to give for the sake of the ideology and for the sake of others. So today, my message isn't really a message at all. It's a thank you to everyone that has been involved in making the last 12 months not only bearable, but enjoyable, educational and ideological. You inspire me. Chag Atzmaut Sameach.